Hey, John, how are you this week?
Hi, Elliot. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Um, so um, I saw this week that there was the fall uh, plenary at FATF was finished up, and they reported out on it. And as you know, we did a webinar about the June plenary back in August, and you can find some of that material on our website. But did you see the report out of the plenary?
Yeah, and as we always try to tell our community, and they don't need us to tell them, but FATF does 3 plenaries a year, and there's a lot of valuable information that comes out during these, whether they are reports, working groups, various initiatives, and obviously mutual evaluations. I think this one, similar in a way to the one in June, is sort of under the pandemic response, right? So as we're all dealing with COVID-19, FATF, which prides itself on these plenaries with a lot of interaction with various governments and all the representatives, has to do these things virtually. So the outcomes sort of reflect that. And the other part of it that I would just highlight real quick is this is the first plenary of the new FATF president from Germany, Marcus, I think it's Player, Pleyer. I think that's how it's pronounced. And this is the first time the presidency will be a 2-year presidency. So that'll give each new president the opportunity to craft his or her strategy over a longer period of time, which I think will be valuable both for the particular series of agendas, but also for FATF in general.
I agree with that. You know, if you're a president just of an organization just for 1 year, by the time you just about figured out how it works, you're handing over the gavel to your successor. So 2 years could allow FATF to be even more effective in pushing through its initiatives. One of the threads that's clearly in here, and you mentioned it already, is the fact that a lot of the activity needs to be done virtually. And one of the strategic initiatives that came out of the earlier plenary was strengthening the global network, which had a lot to do with completing mutual evaluations and that kind of thing. And it's clear from this report that they're trying to figure out how to do something that has a heavy on-the-ground component in a totally virtual way, so that these things can keep going forward, as opposed to just being halted until such time as people are traveling and meeting in person again.
Right. And they also sort of updated the May statement that they issued on, making sure that the AML community is as diligent and focused as possible on, unfortunately, new frauds and illicit activity that occurred during a pandemic. So this sort of updates that. Couple of statements that they talk about in the document is that, you have to be active in identifying and assessing the terrorists and criminals will exploit the pandemic. So sort of reiterating what they said back then, but also talking about sort of age-old issues that are important to us, and that's the effective sharing of information between the public and private sector through various partnerships becomes even more important now because we're not having that in-person interaction. So, a number of things there, nothing earth-shattering in these series of statements, but certainly just reminding us, as our local law enforcement reminds us all the time, to stay vigilant and just remember that, as I said, criminals and terrorists and others, unfortunately, take advantage of these actions, these events, and it just becomes pretty important to just be more aware than perhaps in normal times.
Yes. They also mentioned that they continue to be working on new guidance related to financing risk assessment and mitigation related to proliferation, always a difficult word for me to say, of weapons of mass destruction. And that's been an ongoing FATF focus for quite some time. But They didn't put a time frame around when that new guidance would come out, but they did reaffirm that is in the works.
Yeah, last thing I'd mention is they put together a lot of working groups, as always. They referenced that in November there'll be a joint experts meeting held virtually, and that will be one dealing with various operational issues, and it will include FATF, the UN, the World Bank, IMF, and they'll deal with a variety of issues as they do on a regular basis. So I think it's important that we, when that activity happens and the outcomes of that occur, that we would take a look at that and see how it impacts, if at all, our own jurisdictions and the own issues that we deal with.
Right. Well, thanks, John. I will talk to you next week. You be safe between now and then, okay? And be sure to vote.
Be safe, and everybody vote. We got one more week. Take care.
Bye-bye.